The name's Paul. I'm a 37-year-old salaryman. Today, my wife Rachel and I are moving into my family home where my mom Penny was living by herself. My little sister Paige also helped us with moving in. And right now, we're all slurping on some soba noodles together. Rachel lost both of her parents when she was younger, and she always said that she wanted to live with her in-laws when we got married. Aren't you glad, Rachel?
Yeah, and these noodles that your mom made are really delicious. Well, Rachel, you're slurping them so excitedly that you have a noodle coming out of your nose. What? No way!
Goodness! Here, a tissue.
Thanks. Must be nice to be you, Paul, to have gotten such a cute and beautiful wife. Not at all. Beautiful. Oh, you're making me blush, Paige. You're blushing with a noodle coming out of your nose.
And so, when we first moved in, everybody got along well. However, about a week after we had moved in, that happiness all came crumbling down. One night, when I finished work, I was walking home from the nearest train station when...
Oh, is that you, Paul? Good evening.
This person was Miss Melissa. She lived in this neighborhood, and just like us, her husband, John, and her recently moved back into the neighborhood to live with John's mother, Miss Tammy. For the record, Melissa and Rachel are good friends. Good evening. Are you grocery shopping?
Yes, we've run out of alcohol.
Miss Melissa showed me her tote bag with 3 bottles in it. Are you going to be drinking together with your family? You must all get along so well.
No, I hear that you and Rachel and Miss Penny get along better than anybody, though. It must be nice. I'm so jealous. And not only that, but Rachel is so beautiful, and you're so handsome too, Paul.
After a few minutes of making small talk, I came back home, but then... Huh? What's going on? When I walked into the living room, my mom and Rachel were facing each other, sitting in silence. My mom was glaring at Rachel, and Rachel was looking down at the floor. Both of you, what are you doing? Neither of them seemed like they were going to answer me. But Rachel was the first one to open her mouth.
I'm sorry, Miss Penny, but Melissa is my friend and... Alright then, I shouldn't be the one to talk about it anyway, but if anything were to happen, I'm not going to let it slide. No way! I am definitely not going to forgive it! You better be ready!
And then, Rachel started sobbing. Could it be that this is what they call mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems? I panicked and ran over to Rachel, but then my mom had a scary look on her face as she left the living room. I rubbed Rachel's back for a short while, but then...
I'm sorry. Even though we just moved and you just changed jobs and you must be so busy, and yet I'm making you worry about this, Paul.
Rachel said that to me as she apologized. It was true. In order to move here, I recently moved into a different department, and I was busy trying to get used to my new work quickly. Because of that, I may not have been spending enough time with my family, and it was partly my responsibility that my mother and my wife were having problems. I should be the one apologizing to you. I wasn't able to make time to be together. I'm really sorry. So what happened between you and my mom?
Today I was invited by Melissa to go to a cafe, but when I talked about that, your mom started saying bad things about Melissa, and without thinking, I snapped back at her to please stop talking about Melissa like that. And then we got into an argument.
Melissa was Rachel's only friend in this neighborhood. This town was out in the suburbs, and many of the residents were elderly, and there were very few young people. I could understand why Rachel got frustrated that her only friend was being spoken poorly of. I wonder what on earth my mom was so upset about. Saying, if anything were to happen, that she's not going to let it slide? To be ready? Of course Rachel would be scared if my mom spoke to her like that. By the time I finished listening to Rachel's story, it was already late at night. I put Rachel to sleep, and I also laid down in bed. The next morning, I was worried to leave the two of them at home and to go to the office. But because I had just transferred departments, I couldn't cause trouble to my new colleagues. And also, today was the day that my mom said she was going to hang out with one of her former colleagues, so they shouldn't be left at home alone for the whole day. My mom retired a couple of years ago, but she's a former nurse. She said that she was going to go shopping with a few of her former colleagues from those days. However, while Rachel was hanging up the laundry, my mom was having breakfast, and she said this to me. "Mom, I heard from Rachel, but that was awful of you. For Rachel, Melissa is her only friend here, and..."
And that's exactly why I'm saying I won't forgive her.
Huh? What are you saying? Are you saying that you can't forgive Rachel for having friends? Anyway, don't say anything like that to Rachel ever again, okay?
I can't make that promise.
Hey, Mom! That was when Rachel came back into the living room, so the conversation stopped. After I went to the office, I took any time that I could in between work to stay in touch with Rachel and my mom. And if anything were to happen, I thought I should set myself up so that I could leave at any time. But then, just after the lunch break, I got a text from Rachel. "I was invited by Melissa to go to the nearby mountain range to forage some mountain vegetables," she said. It was already hard enough for my wife to be out here in the suburbs, not getting along with her mother-in-law, and I didn't want to make her stress anymore. I replied, "You should go and have fun." After that, we exchanged a few messages, but perhaps she didn't have any service out in the mountains, and for a few hours, I didn't hear from her. However, when 6 o'clock rolled around, and I messaged her that I was on my way home, I didn't get a reply, which I always did from Rachel. It was dark outside already, so I was sure she should have left the mountain by now. My heart started racing, and when I got out of the train station, I sprinted back home. But when I got there, the house was dark, and neither Rachel nor my mom were home. My mom had told me in advance that she might be coming home late, but it was strange that Rachel wasn't there. I threw my work shoes on the living room sofa, and I ran out the front door. And I headed straight towards Miss Melissa's house. When I rang the doorbell, the person that came out was Mr. John.
"Oh, hello, Mr. Paul. You're so out of breath. What's the matter?"
"I just wanted to ask if perhaps Rachel's here right now."
"Miss Rachel? Who knows?"
That was when Miss Tammy came out and said,
That reminds me, didn't Melissa say after lunch she was going out into the mountain to forage some mountain vegetables with Miss Rachel? Hey, Melissa!
When Miss Tammy called out into the back of the house, Miss Melissa came out, and...
"Hey, Melissa, is it true that you went out into the mountains with Miss Rachel in the afternoon?"
Yeah, I went, but we parted ways in the evening at the train station. Mr. Paul, could it be that Miss Rachel still hasn't gotten home?
Yes, she hasn't opened any of my messages either.
Rachel told me that things weren't going well with her mother-in-law. Are you sure that this isn't your mother's doing that Rachel is missing?
I grabbed my phone and I called my mom, and I thought about confronting her. But then, my mom didn't answer the phone either. Why isn't she answering the phone? Could it be that my mom actually did something? This is suspicious. It's way too suspicious. It was already nighttime, and I didn't want to cause any more trouble to Melissa or her family, so I apologized for bothering them, and I ran back towards my house again. All I could do was pray that she was home. However, the moment that I opened the gate to my house, I saw a shocking sight in front of me, and I froze on the spot! To my disbelief, my mom was standing at the front door, looking like a monster with a hose in hand, and she was blasting Rachel with water! When I looked more closely, Rachel was sobbing and her clothes were completely ragged, and all across her body there were multiple cuts and bruises! I can't believe my mom did this! I immediately ran over and got in between Rachel and my mom, and I held Rachel. "Hey, Mom! What the hell are you doing?" Rachel was shaking from head to toe in my arms.
Paul, just stop getting in the way! This is the only thing we can do!
The only thing we can do? What are you saying? You know it's December right now, right? Even if this was the mother that raised me, I will never, ever forgive her for doing this to my wife that I love! But then it was at that moment,
Thank you.
with tears streaming down her face, Rachel said that. I just continued to hold Rachel. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to protect you from my mom." However, what? To my disbelief, Rachel shook my arms off of her and stood up.
Miss Penny, thank you.
She walked into the freezing water coming out of the hose as she thanked my mom. What's going on? From there, my mom continued, and while continuing to pour the water over Rachel, she explained the situation to me. And when I heard the shocking truth, I was furious! That bastard! I'll never forgive them! And so, with my mom's suggestion, we decided to ask a very powerful person for help, and we began preparations to take down the evil monster and get revenge. Because this powerful person quickly agreed to help us, our preparations went smoothly, and by the next day, we were able to solidify our plan to get revenge on the monster. Well then, let me explain to you now what had happened. Myself, my mother, and Rachel, as well as that powerful person, all headed towards...
Coming! Oh, my, Miss Rachel, you were safe after all. We were all so worried about you. You know, Melissa was crying the whole time.
That's right! It was Miss Tammy's house. We're terribly sorry to make you worry. Is Miss Melissa home right now?
What? Yeah, she's here. Melissa!
And that was when, from somewhere back in the house, we heard a loud, crashing noise echo throughout. Rachel, my mom, and I, as well as Miss Tammy, all went around to the back of the house when...
Ouch!
We saw Miss Melissa there, behind the house, laid out on the ground, along with a bucket and a broom, and standing right next to her was Paige. That's right. The powerful person that we asked for help this time was Paige, but...
It seems she didn't expect anybody to be out of the house, so she was shocked when she saw me and she tripped. It looks like she was trying to escape from the bathroom window over there. Are you okay?
And this is why Paige is the best. Miss Melissa might try to run away, so I'm gonna go around and wait behind the house. That's what she said earlier, but it seems she hit the nail in the head.
Miss Melissa, nice to meet you. My name is Paige and I'm a lawyer.
That's right. My little sister Paige was a lawyer.
Lawyer?
Miss Melissa visibly started to shake and panic.
You left Rachel out in the mountains to die, didn't you? Huh? I would never. Too bad. No matter how much you try to play dumb, it's pointless. There are people who saw you coming down from the mountain by yourself, and we've already researched into it.
That's right. Miss Melissa, to our disbelief, had left Rachel out in the mountains. Rachel risked her life and somehow got down from the mountain, but she tripped and fell in the pitch-black mountains, and she scratched herself on trees and branches, and that's why she looked like that. The reason why my mom was showering her with a hose was because as a former nurse, she knew that anytime you were scratched by unknown plants, that you can't put hot water on it, and the best thing to do is rinse it with cold water and soap. Even though you're the criminal that left Rachel out in the mountains, you have some nerve putting on an act like you were actually worried about Rachel. When I said that to Melissa,
What did you say?
that was when Mr. John appeared.
Honey!
I was out buying the groceries, and when I got home, I heard voices from behind the house. And when I got here, hey, Melissa, what's going on?
Hey, it's all a misunderstanding.
Miss Melissa had sweat streaming down her forehead, and she panicked.
You, even in this situation, are you still planning on lying? You know, ever since the beginning, I've had a bad feeling about you. I knew that you were up to no good, and I was so worried that you were going to do something to Rachel. That's why I told her to be careful about you. But it was just a feeling. I couldn't tell her not to go near you based on that. But I heard you say this to Paul, that maybe it was my doing that Rachel disappeared. Why would that ever be the case? You know, Rachel is my precious daughter. Miss Penny.
That's right. The reason why my mom had said, if anything were to happen that I'm not going to let it slide, to be ready, was not actually towards Rachel, but she was talking about Melissa.
That's exactly what I hated about you!
Suddenly, Miss Melissa started crying and yelling.
Rachel! She's always talking about how much your family gets along, and all she does is brag, and it was irritating! Even though every single day I'm stuck here being harassed by my mother-in-law! What on earth are you saying?
Miss Tammy raised her voice, and everybody turned around. While the commotion was going on, Miss Tammy had brought a travel bag from inside the house, and she threw it in front of Melissa, who was sitting on the ground.
Don't tell me you're talking about when I ask you to help out with the chores even just a little bit, or when I tell you to be careful when you're drowning yourself in alcohol every day. Or when I yell at you to stop stealing money out of John's wallet. Are you trying to say that's harassment? Because...
You were never like this when we got married, but you take advantage of my mom's kindness? And you were just getting carried away, weren't you?
Well, that's, you see... And now you've done this to a third party. Hurry up and get out of this house. Get out. But my family has already disowned me. Where am I supposed to go then?
Melissa was throwing a tantrum, but Miss Tammy and Mr. John ignored her and turned to us.
Miss Rachel, Miss Penny, Mr. Paul, we are truly terribly sorry.
We are so sorry.
They got down on their knees and apologized. However, Melissa continued to cause a commotion and was screaming, so...
At this rate, it's going to disturb the neighbors. It is cold outside, so Miss Melissa, why don't you come to my office for now?
When Paige chimed in, Miss Tammy grabbed Melissa's bag, and then Mr. John grabbed Melissa by the arm.
Hey, stop it! Stop it! I said let me go!
Mr. John dragged Melissa over to the car and threw her inside. When Paige saw that, she also got into her car. And the two cars drove off together. The whole time, Melissa was crying and slamming on the door in the back seat, and it seemed like she was yelling something at us. But due to the thick windows, we couldn't hear anything she said, and she didn't get her last words in the end. After that, it was a given that Miss Melissa and Mr. John got divorced. Because Paige was an extremely brilliant lawyer, Rachel was able to receive a very high settlement fee from Miss Melissa. Because our family had a reliable little sister named Paige, this time we didn't need to go to the police. And this was how the incident closed. But after being kicked out of the house, Melissa was stuck having to pay a very high settlement fee. And because she had to take out a loan from Consumer Finances, she also had to get a job in order to pay back the loan. However, she couldn't find anywhere to live, and we were shocked to hear that she snuck back into the house and was trying to live in Miss Tammy's attic. Of course, she had given the key back to Miss Tammy already, so apparently she was sneaking in and out of the bathroom window. Rachel saw that one day, and Melissa was arrested for trespassing. It seemed she'd been stealing money and other things from Miss Tammy and Mr. John, so it looked like she won't be able to roam freely for a while. Well then, as for our family, after this one incident, it seemed like Rachel was getting along with my mom even more than me. Sometimes, it almost seems like Rachel and my mom are the family related by blood, instead of me and my mom. That reminds me, after the incident, Rachel and I got down on our knees to apologize to my mom. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't believe that I misunderstood, and I thought that you were terrorizing Rachel.
If only I had listened to you from the beginning, Miss Penny, none of this would have happened. I truly am sorry. Both of you, please get up. Regardless of what happened, the case is closed. Now we can celebrate. I'm home! Wait, you're both still apologizing to Mom?
Paige!
Miss Paige, thank you so much for everything you did to help us. Thank you! I've heard that too many times now. More importantly, guys, I brought the ingredients for the chicken hot pot tonight. And of course, soba noodles to finish. All right, well, let's get to preparing then. Oh, I will help too.
Well then, me too.
Paul, you can go buy the alcohol. Miss Rachel, please boil the noodles. And Paige, please cut up the ingredients. I'll get all of the other appetizers prepared. Got it! All right, I'm going to put my all into preparing for this dinner. Thank you for watching! What kind of crazy people will we get to see next? Stay tuned